Yeah. All right. Thank you for coming on.
Hi,
Uh,
Alan.
I really appreciate this.
Great to be
Um,
on.
yeah, I've been wanting to talk to you for a while since you started your band.
hmm
Do you want to tell me why you decided to start a band? Like, what made you want to do it?
Yeah, so I've always been very kind of creatively passionate about different performing arts. Like I dance. I've always been really into music, live performance, listening to music, all that kind of stuff. I'm the kind of person that will go out looking for opportunities where music is being performed, whether it's concerts, whether it's little gatherings, all that kind of stuff. And I've been very fortunate to have friends who are very talented kind of musicians, some of them vocalists, percussion, instruments, all that. Um, and over the last, ever since I came to the UK, I've been involved in a lot of community programs, events, where there is a lot of live dance and music involved. When I moved to London, there are a lot of musicians, especially Desi people who are in their own individual ways. They are doing music, sharing music, and I always had this kind of idea that I'd love to put together a collective almost of people where we can share and perform Indian music, different styles of Indian music.
Yeah.
And I haven't really seen there aren't many groups that do that in a really good, in a really kind of professional way, in a really um, way that you can engage with the community as well.
Yeah. So, is that something that you've been wanting to do after you moved for university to Surrey?
No, it's something kind of I always had in the back of my mind, but it's
Okay.
the how to bring people together. I've never started a band before. I've done dance teams and things before, but band is very different. It's a different caliber of people. Um, so the game changing point was when one of my friends, now partner, Mr. Joseph Vincent, moved from Bombay to the UK for masters. So he's quite a seasoned musician. He's done shows, or he's performed in his own band. He has got a lot of he's a very experienced performer when it comes to music back in India. So when he moved, in the lead up to him moving, we had a lot of conversations about, what do you think? Can we start a band? There are people I know who are really good, really talented, but what I need is somebody who has the vision of how to make a performance work, how to create an arrangement.
Yeah.
And he was somebody who had that kind of background and experience. That was 2021. And the main kind of catalyst reason I also want to create a band back then is in 2022, it was going to be 25 years of the Exeter Respect Festival.
Yeah.
You quite know of it because
Yeah.
we've been part of it for so many years from Exeter. It's one of the UK's biggest human rights festivals.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it is
I did
because
not know that till now.
yeah. So for those of you who don't know, never heard about it before, it happens over the first weekend of June every year on a Saturday and Sunday, and the footfall generally is about 20,000 people, so it's huge. And I've been a part of the festival since I was about 15, 16 years old.
Yeah.
I've almost grown up with it. I've performed, I've hosted it, I've um, helped to organize it, I've made a documentary film about it. So when it came to the 25th anniversary, I had a conversation with the founder, and I was like, I would really love to make a band and bring that to the festival. And at Extra Respect, um, performing arts from India has always had a very special kind of connection with the festival because
Yeah.
there's a huge Malayali community, there's a huge Punjabi community, and their kind of performances, song, dance, music, costumes, all of that, people love it.
Yeah.
Um, so Suad, who's the founder of the festival, she was very, very happy, very keen. So that was kind of the main catalyst reason. With Joseph moving and this coming up in 2022, I was like, okay, now is the time. Let's put a band together. And then Feb 2022, we made the Ghana Collective, which is the band.
What were some of the challenges that you faced putting the band together? Because I can't imagine that it's an easy process by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, no, it was actually really hard. What was really surprising for me, and for both of us actually, when we went out looking for performers and musicians, you hear about, I follow quite a lot of people on social media who are based in London or based around in the UK who sing, who play instruments, is that. But when we were canvassing for performers and musicians to join us as a band, it was very difficult to find people and then find people who are going to be committed. The most difficult was actually finding somebody who could play drums properly. To this date, we haven't found somebody who is able to play
Really?
drums, who would be willing to experiment with us and actually join
Okay.
and all that kind of stuff.
Wait, is that Is it that you haven't been able to find someone who plays the drums in a way that you want for the band?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, some we are looking for. We were at the time looking for seasoned people with a fair bit of experience playing drums, because the kind of arrangements Joseph wanted to put together, it was not a basic arrangement. So we wanted people who were a bit experienced, and interested in kind of different styles of Indian music, because we had about 4 months uh, up to the festival. So that was very challenging. And then trying to coordinate rehearsal times and getting together in the space, all this kind of stuff was very hard. Thankfully, through contacts and networks and stuff, a couple of the members of the band were studying at Kingston University, St. Joseph. So we were able to get access to some of the rehearsal rooms there. That was quite nice. But then everybody's kind of studying full time, working full time. So trying to get together, make the space to rehearse was really challenging. But the team were absolutely fantastic. The commitment it takes to rehearse and learn this whole new arrangement, do
Yeah.
harmonies, learn different languages for songs. Like, hats off to the team. Like, they working with them every week made the experience so beautiful, no matter how challenging it got.
Yeah. Doing obviously bringing the band together.
Mm,
You've got a bunch of different people
hmm
who are in their own rights solo performers, or they've got their own small collectives.
Yeah,
Um, was there any kind of like personalities or like that didn't gel together with it?
yeah. We did have issues here and there. I'm not going to go into too much detail
Yeah.
about that, but the thing that worked for us is Joseph and I had a very clear vision of what we wanted out of this collective, the kind of sound we wanted, the kind of music, the kind of songs we were looking to do. And we made sure as best as possible before every rehearsal we knew exactly what the harmonies he made sure he knew what the harmonies were going to look like, and what he wanted the instruments to sound like, all that kind of stuff. That really helped. And for me, I made it very clear to the group before, like, why are we actually doing this performance, what it means. It's not to make any one of us famous, or it's not, we're not out here to become celebrities or all that kind of stuff. We're doing it to bring a community together, to share music.
Yeah.
And the team by and large were very um they bought into that. And I think the sheer joy of jamming together is, it's
Yeah.
something that people get high on, I think. And that was definitely the case for us. After every session, no matter how tired we were, having that joy of music, sharing music together, was
Yeah.
kept everybody going. Um, and I think everybody who knows me, including you, will know that I'm a very no nonsense kind of person. So when it comes to making things work and creating beautiful stuff together, like, that is the priority, and that's what everybody needs to be there for. There's no confusion about that.
Yeah. Obviously, you've grown up in Mumbai for
Hmm
most of your childhood, right?
hmm
And your formative years. And obviously coming over here, like I'd say you probably got like most of us Malus,
hmm
like we have either one or two backgrounds that we've come from,
hmm
right? You got people who were like born and brought up here, like
hmm
that's just one background. Like I've come from like the Middle East,
hmm
like a lot of other people, and you've come from like Mumbai as well.
hmm
Like, do you think that helped you? Because obviously, when you're bringing like the music that you're saying, it's
hmm
you want to bring a community together. That's essentially what you would call like a melting pot of like different
Yeah.
cultures, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think that made you well suited to kind of see that vision through?
I think 100%. So both me and Joseph have our roots in Bombay, and growing up in Bombay, you're exposed to cultures and languages and people from all over India. It's not just people from Kerala. It's not just people from the north. It's everyone and everything all at the same time. And even when we started the band, I remember. I think when I moved to the UK, what was very interesting for me is when I met Malayalis here, everybody had a very strong identity of, I'm a Malayali and I'm from Kerala. And I've even
Yeah,
heard people say, I would always say I'm a Malayali, but I'll never say I'm from India, as though those were two very separate entities. I never thought of it like that when I
yeah,
growing up, because for me, it's India, it's all the same.
yeah,
Um, and when we started the band, because majority of the people in the band are all Indian, but there's only about three Malayalis in there. We were 11-person band, but we started off three or four Malayalis. And I remember people asking me, "Oh, are they all Malayalis?" And I was like, "No, they're not. We have somebody from Maharashtra, we have somebody from Karnataka, we have somebody from, we even had a white guy in the band." So it I people were surprised when I said that, because they see me as Malayali, they see Joseph as Malayali, and they automatically assume that the whole band is Malayali. So actually having the conversation about this is not just a Kerala band, it's not just a Malayali band, it's not just a South Indian band. We are here to try lots of different languages. I think in the team, we have the capacity to actually sing in about 6, 7, 8 different languages. So when you think about that in the context of India, being able to reach out to that much more people, um, to me is beautiful. To be able to connect to all those languages, all those cultures. That's one of my uh, driving force for why I want to keep this going as well.
Yeah.
Because being able to bring people together through a shared love for music, there's nothing like it. So
Right.
yeah.
That's something that I've noticed like a lot as well recently, where music, it's seen as a universal language. I was
Hmm.
talking about this with Basil, and I was just asking him, what makes you, what, in your opinion, what makes music such a universal language? Because it's not, like, you can listen to music that you don't understand, because
Hmm.
like you got something like K-pop, which
Hmm.
is so popular now.
Hmm.
But I'm willing to, put money on it and say that most people in the West who are listening to K-pop,
Hmm.
they probably don't understand the lyrics
Hmm.
like at all,
Hmm.
right? Like, in your opinion, what makes music like that? What makes music a universal language that people can all like relate to, regardless of what background they're from or what kind of history that they've got?
I think for me, music is very emotional. It stirs up lots of different kinds of emotions, and that's not, no matter how hard you try. I don't think you can put up a barrier. You can never. I don't think you can actually say, I'm gonna stop this piece of music from making me feel the way it's making me feel. I don't think you can ever actually naturally do that, because I think I feel like all the music we hear comes also from nature. There's so many sounds. It doesn't have to be music created from instruments or on a computer. Even the sounds we hear in nature can be so beautiful. And I have seen the way music can cut through people's barriers, people's troubles, people's griefs, all that kind of stuff. Um, and it's got that powerful kind of capacity to cut through all your barriers, and that's what makes me keep going back to listening to music, experience music, all that kind of stuff. Um, and also something like beats, rhythmic beats that doesn't have any words, it doesn't have any
No.
language. It could be beats. People, when you listen to different kind of beats, could be Indian percussion instruments, could be African percussion instruments, could be the normal 4-piece drum. You will react to it because it
Yeah,
stirs something in you, and that doesn't have any language, anything.
yeah. Do you
Eh,
think that's like just like evolutionary? So it's like, obviously, if you like look at it, like we've all kind of, you go back like hundreds and thousands of years ago,
mhm,
we've all kind of got that same background, and we probably all had these same languages at one point,
mhm.
and as a result of that, we probably did share the same music as well at one point. Do you think there's something innate in humans that we kind of just connect with on a really, like, almost like on a DNA level?
uh, I didn't know. I'm not so sure about the science behind it all, but I think the human need for connection, yes, 100%. Whether that's through music, whether that's through food, whether that's through whatever means, I think the human need for connection is very much present, no matter where you go in the world, no matter how people want to hold them, no matter how much people want to hold themselves back. And even if you're in a space where you think, I don't need anybody, I don't need anything, I don't think that's very realistic or natural or healthy. I
No.
think the need to kind of have human connection in whatever form, I think is very present even today. And I guess with music, I think globalization has also helped a lot with that. Taking different styles of music across to different countries. I think all the musicians that I've also helped with that, coming for me, all the singers and artists that have come over from India to spread the joy of like Indian classical music, Carnatic or Hindustani.
Yeah.
Um, uh, Bollywood plays a huge part in that. So I think the need for connection, yes, from a sciencey point of view,
Yeah.
but also globalization, um, I think has gone a long way in our shared understanding of what music is today.
Yeah. Do you think that music might be one of the kind of last modes of connection that we've got as human beings, because like you just look at the world today, everyone's kind of like, I think we're going into a much more like isolated
Hmm.
like um world where you just exist in your own like
Bubble.
bubbles
Hmm.
almost. And you see that like, you see that in India now,
Hmm.
where it's kind of become like a north versus south divide. I had
Hmm.
down Nilakandan RS, like he wrote a book about this,
Hmm.
and he was saying like you were talking about before, um, in the south there's a strong southern identity. So
Yes.
if you're
Yes.
Tamil first, then you're Indian,
Hmm.
and again if you're from Kerala, you're a Malayali first,
And then
and
you're
then you're
Indian.
Indian,
Yeah.
right? You don't find that in the north,
Hmm.
and again like even here as well, you're starting to see that way more. And I probably, it might be a bit more controversial, but I think you're seeing that even in the Malayali communities here, like
Hmm.
in the UK, like go like 10 years ago, right? Um, there was this kind of where idea where you integrate into a culture,
Hmm.
and you give and you take.
Hmm.
Like there was that, but now I think that's becoming less and less, and we're almost comfortable just, well, I mean, obviously it is way more comfortable to just exist in your own bubble and with the people that you know and everything.
Hmm.
Do you think there is an element of that where music is like the only like kind of last strong point, last hold, where different cultures
Can
can
come
come
together.
together?
Music, yes, but also not just limited to music. I think arts
Well,
in
yeah, sorry,
general,
yeah, arts.
I think is one of the most purest, most reliable sources of bringing people together
yeah,
100%. Whether that's through music, whether that's through paintings, whether that's through dance, whether that's through theater, whatever it might be. And I am somebody who's very immersed into that, and I cannot thank my parents and my gurus, whoever introduced me to the different styles of art, enough.
yeah,
I didn't value it enough when I was growing up in India and learning like Bharatanatyam and Carnatic music.
yeah.
Didn't value it at all, and I used to curse my mom. I was like, "Why are you making me go to these classes? Why are you making me
Really?
perform?" I used to be so angry at being,
Oh my god! I always thought that you did it because you wanted to.
So it's very. I've had a very interesting journey with arts almost. When I was I think I started learning Bharatanatyam when I was 8 years old, and there were so many days I remember when my mom literally used to drag my hand and take me to the classes because I'd be there throwing complete tantrum because I didn't want to do it because the first couple of years, anybody who's learned Bharatanatyam will know, like first couple of years are very hard because you're setting your foundation, you're just doing the same moves, adavus. If anybody has, if you know about this, you're doing the same stuff over and over again. And for me, as an 8-year-old, all I wanted to do was, go and play with my friends and all that kind of stuff. But
Okay.
my mom, she was taking me to all these classes and make me perform, whether it's in church, whether it's in the local, society programs, all that kind of stuff. My whole relationship with dance changed when I moved to the UK. So I had 5, 6 years of, training and performing and all this stuff. Didn't value it, hated it, if anything. Moved to the UK, and then I was suddenly in a position where there was no opportunity to do anything. So for all those years that I'd been exposed to those chances in India, I took it very much for granted. Moved to the UK, and suddenly there was no music, there was no dance, there was no nothing. And that put me in such a bad mental space. And that's when I realized this brought so much meaning to my life. So in Exeter, I mean, you also know this, there wasn't any kind of Indian classical
No.
opportunities. Um, and when I met Suad in relation to Exeter Respect, I was mind blown by my mum again, mum being mum. She used to again force me to go to performances. And I remember the first time I performed, it was for some kind of Exeter Respect launch event. I think it was March 2010. I had finished my piece and I was blown away by the applause and the appreciation and people coming up and saying, "Oh, that was wonderful," because I was so unexpected. I didn't think people would care. I didn't think people would, pay attention or anything. Um, and that gave me a bit of confidence back and kind of made me think from a different perspective. What does dance
Yeah.
mean? What does it bring to people? And then when I went to university, I think that whole hunger to just throw myself into every creative opportunity I could find
Yeah.
came surging back. And then dance took on a whole new meaning because I saw the power it had to, again, bring people together. When I was at university, I was, dancing with university students, doing competitions. I was teaching kids in the local community. I was teaching older people in the local community. And the joy it brings to everybody, myself included. Um, it was just it was I wanted to keep that going for as long as I can. So it took on a whole new chapter.
Yeah. So is that something you didn't experience when you were doing dance in India, where um, because I guess like Bharatanatyam and Indian dance is like it's native to India, so it's just seen as a bit common. So it's almost kind of like a nonchalant response to it.
Yeah, I think so. When whenever you perform and you've performed with friends, I always enjoyed it, but that was very naive kind of enjoyment. You like it, it's having fun. You're with your friends, you're performing, people clap, all that kind of stuff. When you're a kid, you perceive that moment very differently. I didn't back then. I didn't realize the value of what I had, but I think growing up and moving to a place where those opportunities do not exist, even if you want to go after it,
Yeah,
that changed my perspective. That made me realize that I don't want to dance just because my mom is taking me to competitions or forcing me to. I want to dance because it genuinely makes me happy.
okay.
So my whole journey with dance changed, I guess, from there.
What made your mum so adamant to take you? Because um, I would care to say that it's probably quite uncommon for
Mm.
an Indian parent to kind
Mhm.
of throw their
Yeah.
kids into the arts because, from my experience and
Yeah.
from what I know as well, it's normally just study, study, study.
Yeah. 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 I think so. Back then, so in my church in Bombay, in our diocese even, there were a lot of like cultural competitions and things that used to happen. So I think my mom's main motivation was that go and win competitions.
Okay.
But also like she is somebody that used to dance and perform a lot when she was younger.
Oh,
So I
okay. I
don't know if
see.
that also played into it. A lot of my aunties and stuff from back in Kerala, they remember my mom as somebody who was always very like
Yeah.
kind of creative and very out there in terms of
Okay.
performance. Um, I should actually go back and ask her, like, what made you, beyond just, go and perform at competitions, what made you make me go to dance classes and
Yeah.
stuff? I've never really asked her that. I should, actually.
Do you think, obviously, it's a creative pursuit, but also there's a level of discipline that it brings into your life that maybe she wanted you to get out of it?
I think possibly, I don't know if that was her main intention, but if you, I mean, I guess any kind of skill or anything you want, any kind of train, any kind of ability you want to develop,
Yeah.
discipline forms one of the biggest parts of that. Dance taught me a lot. Again, I didn't really know what that discipline meant till I grew up and I was living on my own. And
Yeah.
discipline in every single aspect of your life, I think, is very important.
Yeah.
Dance taught me a lot of that. Whether my mom thought, okay, if she goes to dance class, she's gonna learn discipline, that I'm not so sure about, but it definitely taught me a lot of things because you commit to training, you turn up to class on time, you do what your gurus, you learn from your gurus, and it's a beautiful experience.
I guess that's something that we always take for granted when we grow up, right? Like things that our parents make us do.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
in that moment, we think, "Oh, like why are we doing this?
Why? Yeah.
I know better."
Yeah.
But then, like when like 10 years down the line, you're like, "Oh shit! I now realize why you made me
Yeah.
do all of
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
stuff."
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? That's kind of crazy. Like, um, how did like doing dance on but doing all those different types of dance
Hmm.
kind of change you right as a person? How did it help help to develop who you are and kind of become who you are now?
I've never been a kind of introverted person. I think that came like from when I was a kid. I think always being with groups of people performing. I've singing, dancing, acting, all that kind of stuff. Um, I think made me like um the whole thing of stage fright, whether it's speaking to people, whether it's
Yeah.
performing on stage, it helped me with that a lot. Um, I don't really remember a time when I used to have serious stage fright because for as long as I remember, I was on stage doing a lot of stuff. The memories I've made from my time back then are so beautiful. I think with the discipline, with the kind of being out there, having that kind of personality where you kind of your energy, people can see it, they buy into it. and that helps to kind of connect with a lot of different individuals. It gave me a lot of that. The creativity in it. I've always said that I'm not a very creative person myself, but when I look back on the kind of things I've done and the ideas I've had and what that's actually led to, I think it's definitely helped me with being creative and having insights into different worlds almost. Because, growing up in India, learning all different styles of dance, being with all different cultures, you learn so much more. Like whether it's, whether it's celebrating Diwali during November, whether it's Holi, whether it's Dasera, whether it's Makar Sankranti, no matter what it is, I was out there with everyone, celebrating
Yeah.
everything, being part of everything. And moving to and also learning Hindi alongside that. I remember when I came to the UK and I used to meet people, Malayalis who are from maybe straight from Kerala, and I would speak in Malayalam, and then I would switch to Hindi when I'm speaking to my brother or somebody else who knows Hindi,
Yeah.
and the shock on people's faces, like, "How do you know Hindi?" And I would say that I grew up in Bombay. Their shock surprised me in the beginning, till I realized that, till I understand where that shock was coming from. Because people, I don't know, there's still maybe a perception that people outside of Kerala don't know, Malayalis don't know Malayalam or don't know Hindi, like that world doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I still see that surprise sometimes today. Um, when I speak in Malayalam and I switch to Hindi, and like there's still very much like, oh, what? Where are you from? And it's a very interesting question. So I think, again, connecting with all different parts of India, connecting with all different people, that's what it's always been for me. And bringing all of that performance experience to the UK when I joined dance teams here. I'm trying to start up something like a band of my own. Being able to call upon my experiences from the past, how we formed teams, and keeping in touch with people who had helped me back then, helped me so much to do the kind of stuff I've done here. That was a huge part of the experience, I would say.
Like, um, having experienced like the northern Indian community
Mhm.
and the southern Indian community, like what kind of differences have been quite screamingly obvious to you, just in terms of like culture and just outlook and all of that kind of stuff?
I would say a huge thing, which, you know, friends of mine from Kerala still make fun of me, is like, my Malayalam used to be terrible, absolutely terrible. Moving again, people laugh when I say this. Like, I would say my Malayalam became better after moving to the UK, because when our whole group from Exeter, nobody spoke Hindi except maybe one person.
Yeah.
um and I had no choice but to learn to speak in Malayalam. And I used to be made fun of, both me and my brothers. We used to be made fun of for so long,
Yeah.
even after I moved to university, because there is the pronunciation, it's and I realized after coming here, like, how passionate Malayalis are about their film references. And I never used to understand a lot of that, because growing up, maybe not as I didn't used to watch as many of the old and golden Malayalam films, all that kind of stuff. So the film references used to throw me so much. I'm a lot better now. I've learned my lessons. But so I think the film references, um, and I know that, like, my friends from Bombay, like, I see how my Malayalam used to be, because that's how they speak now. Yeah, that's how they
Okay.
still speak. And it makes me laugh when I look back and I just think I used to speak like that. Now it's improved so much more. What other differences? I would say what I've seen a lot of, like Malayalis who have come from Kerala. Like, I don't know if it's intentional, or there's almost like a don't really care attitude about what's happening in the rest of India. It's like, the perspective, the attention is given to maybe what's happening within Kerala itself.
Yeah.
But like growing up somewhere like Bombay, because you're exposed to everything and anything, and Bombay being one of like financial capital of India, you feel the effect of like whatever happens in the rest of India a lot more in Bombay, probably maybe than what you do in Kerala. Um, I guess a bit of that as well. Like, you're a lot more exposed to, could be news, could be events, could be anything, and you have a bit more knowledge on that kind of stuff. With regards to dance and the band, uh, I think knowing kind of like, even if there's a thing that Joseph and I almost we would love to incorporate within the music of the band one day. It's like, it's like Nasik Dol. Nasik is a place in Maharashtra. Dol is the Dol Nasik Dol sound is a very distinct percussion sound. that might mean nothing to somebody who's from Kerala, because they don't maybe haven't
Wait,
heard what Nasik is.
is that the drum or
It's the dhol is a drum, but
yeah?
I call it Nasik dhol. It's probably called something else. But the beat is a very distinct beat. I won't try and do it because I'll mess it up.
Okay.
But it's the kind of beat that you hear around Ganpati Visarjan time. When you're out on the streets in the processions, it's that specific, and it's the kind of thing where any person from Bombay, you hear that beat, you will start dancing.
Yeah.
It's like you hear Chandamelam in Kerala. You hear that beat, it stirs something, and you want to start dancing. It's the same similar kind of thing. So those kind of nuances for me, because I am from Bombay, and my connection with Kerala has now gone such a long way after moving to the UK. That again has been very interesting for me. Um, all of that together, yeah, I would say.
Like, how often do you go to Bombay now?
I try and go as much as I can. I was there last year. I'm going this year,
Yeah.
because I've still thankfully, retained like relationships and connections with almost everybody from back in Bombay. Even my high school teachers in my school in Bombay. Whenever I go back, I still go and visit them in school because they're there and they remember me. People I grew up with, people I've known since I was 3 years old. My dance teacher in Bombay that she used to teach me about 15 years ago. I still maintain very strong connections because that keeps me rooted, and I think that's very important. No matter where you go, no matter how far you go, I think remembering where you came from, um, remembering all of those things, keeps you grounded and definitely helps me not to lose sight of who I am. Yeah, I think that's very important
Is
as well.
that something that you're worried about, like losing sight of who you used to be, or
Not anymore, not anymore. I remember when I first came to the UK. Um, that was in 2009, and I went back to India for the first time in 2012. In those kind of 3-4 years, I had the worst form of identity crisis I've ever faced, because when I came to the UK, I spoke very good English, but obviously I looked brown and I had an accent. And when I joined school, I was one of only 3 non-English, non-white students in my entire school. So my classmates didn't really understand, my accent and, my hairstyle or whatever made me. They didn't really get it. I remember there was a time in school when it was a non-uniform day and I wore like a churidar to school. And I had so many kids laughing at me and I didn't understand why they were laughing at me. Probably I was too naive at that point. Um, what was the question you asked? Lost track. Oh, losing sight of who I am. So I had all of that going on. And then when I went back to Bombay in 2012, I had started to develop a bit of the British accent. And suddenly I didn't know who I was anymore. Am I still Indian? How much of Malayali am I? Am I British? What is my accent supposed to be like? What is my language supposed to be? Who am I now?
yeah?
It was really, really tough. Um, and over the years, I've got to a point, I've realized for myself that no matter where I go, my heart is always Hindustani. I am as Indian as I can be. But growing up in the UK has given its own opportunities, has had its own kind of beautiful advantage, opportunities, all that kind of stuff. And I'm now able to carry both of those parts of my identity quite well in a very balanced way. When I go to India, when I'm back in Bombay now, I won't have the British accent because I switch quite naturally now between both. The accent, that was a huge part. And still,
Sorry, you mean you just switch from like a British accent to an Indian accent?
yeah, when I'm speaking in English, if you hear me speak, you will find it funny. But I switch quite naturally. Yeah,
Does that come like automatically to you,
it
or
comes. Yeah, it's not something I have to think about. It's not something I have to become
I
conscious about, because when I moved here, my friends back in India were very, very clear about one thing. Like, if you come back with that British accent, then we're gonna we're gonna sort you out. So my friends back there were very clear about that. So I was also very terrified.
okay? I've I know what you mean
Mm,
because I I've seen myself do it
yeah,
at
when you
times,
switch, yeah.
but I don't think I've seen myself do it. And I'm in India, but I think when I'm speaking to like Indian friends here,
Hmm.
for whatever reason, does like sometimes come a small Indian accent,
Hmm.
and I can hear it myself sometimes. But
Yeah,
then if you're not talking to like not if you're talking to like non-Indian people, then you just switch it up a bit.
yeah, yeah.
Like, I never realized it. Well, I mean, I've always realized it, but I never kind of paid that much attention to it until you just pointed it out.
Yeah, for me, I think one of the things that's really helped with retaining the whole Indian identity has also been not losing touch with Hindi.
Yeah.
Um, I do love Malayalam, but I came to Malayalam a lot later in life. Hindi was my go-to language for anything and everything to do when I was growing up in Bombay. Um, and being able to still keep the language, understand the nuance, understand the whether it's the slang, whether it's the whatever changes in Hindi slang that have been happening in Bombay, keeping in touch with that has helped me out so much.
Yeah.
And then equally getting more immersed into Malayalam later on in life, learning that language, then being able to speak to cousins and aunt relatives and people back in Kerala a lot more freely. Like now, I know I would go out, go shopping, go on public transport, everything, with not being worried because I know the language and I can speak and I can communicate. And I don't know if it's something that you've thought about, like when you know the language when you're in a new place, it helps so much when you're thinking about how do I get around, how do I ask,
Oh
go to a
yeah.
shop, how do I order food, all of that kind of stuff.
100%.
It helps so much. Now I think keeping in touch with both of those languages and actually making an active effort to learn maybe more Malayalam, to not forget Hindi. I've done that very consciously, and I'm it's helped me out so much.
What have you done to kind of retain that? Because you said it's been a conscious effort on your part.
I think before, with Hindi, like when I've spoke to friends from back home, making an active effort to keep speaking in Hindi. I used to try and read like paragraphs of like Hindi text on the internet and stuff, so I won't lose this ability to be able to read Hindi as well. With Malayalam, when I moved to the UK and I realized how terrible my Malayalam was and how much I was being made fun for it, I kid you not, I spent my dad had a lot of like DVDs at home of so many Malayalam films, and I spent my entire first year probably watching a Malayalam film practically every day to try and pick up the language. Um, almost an entire year. What's very interesting, even for when people hear me speak Malayalam, is I have a very natural Thrissur slang. Nobody understands why. I don't know
Yeah.
why because I never lived in Thrissur. But my aunties and my family members have a very distinct Thrissur accent, like Thrissur kind of style of
Yeah.
talking. Um, and I don't know where I picked it up from, but I did. So no matter what new words I speak,
I mean, I'm
um,
guessing it must be from like family, right?
I think I probably, and also like when I moved to university, I had a lot of Mali friends there who are from Thrissur. So I
Yeah.
think speaking to them also just developing that a little bit.
Yeah. Because I remember meeting like a guy when I was like traveling,
Mm,
and he was from Argentina, right?
right.
And he taught himself English through just watching Hollywood films and
Yeah.
Friends,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And he's never been to America, but he spoke English with an American accent,
Mhm.
and it
Mm.
was like, I thought,
Why?
yeah, and I thought like that was wild, right?
Mm.
I remember talking to him like, "Oh, you're from America?" And he's like, "No, I'm from Argentina." And then he's like, "You got an American accent?" And he's like, "Yeah, I just taught myself English
Yeah.
using like Hollywood movies and just watching Friends,"
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which is crazy to think about, but like it's it's almost like what we do as well. Because I've been told like, "Oh, you have like the Angamali like
When you
accent."
speak Malayalam,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Obviously, I don't see it, and even when I go to India, like um probably my family members don't
Mm.
really see it that much either.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it's interesting how people like notice those like nuances of like a stranger, right?
Yeah.
When
And I had no idea that, accents in Kerala could be so different
oh
until I
yeah,
moved to the UK and I heard people who are from Kottayam and I heard people from Thrissur and Ernakulam and Trivandrum and all these different areas. And I was like, oh, there's a whole new world here that I didn't even know. Although I have been a Malayali all my life and all that kind of stuff, there's a whole new, journey here that I've never explored, never never had any exposure to, and I loved it. It was challenging also, sometimes to understand, sometimes to, because words mean very different, I think, different areas of Kerala. I think learning all of that, but it was very interesting. And on the subject of language, when we are talking about connection earlier, when I moved to the UK, it was very surprising for me to really see and perceive this whole North India South India divide. But at the same time, you know, because my first few years were quite isolated in the UK, because not knowing any people, not knowing, not being confident enough to go out, and definitely, Indian parents don't let you go out on your own anyway.
Yeah.
And then when you move to kind of university and stuff, and you come across somebody, and there's that classic question, "Naat there," and the joy that that brings, and the friendships that has spawned just
Yeah.
with that one question, I think I've never seen anything like it
Yeah.
ever.
Right. That's another thing as well. Like for me, I remember my parents saying like, I I obviously came here a bit later on as well.
Yeah.
I came in like what, year 9, year 8
Yeah.
that time. But obviously Exeter's quite a homogenous like place, right?
Mhm.
There's not like there is a strong Malayali community,
Mhm.
but for us, like in schools and
There wasn't.
like there wasn't
Okay,
that
there
many. Like
wasn't.
I mean, there is a lot more now,
Yeah.
but the community was just starting to put its roots down.
Yeah.
So there weren't that many minorities or
Mhm.
like people that we interacted with, and I was just I was I remember my mom telling me, she was like, I was starting to lose like my Malayalam
Yeah.
quite a bit, and I went to uni, and I came back like after the first semester for Christmas, and she was like, "Where have you picked up all
All
this
this bad.
Malayalam from?" And I remember thinking, you don't really notice it because
Yeah.
obviously you're just like immersed into it,
Mhm.
right? And it's almost like I kind of picked up my roots back
Mhm.
again.
Back again. Yeah,
Uh,
I had the same experience, and especially when you come to when I went to university and I saw a lot of Indian students there who were international students from India. I kind of made when I moved to the UK, and I had the kind of isolation that I had. I had a very active social life back in Bombay and all that kind of stuff. Moved to the UK, there was just isolation and loneliness for 1 2 years, and that really threw me into very deep kind of depression almost, because suddenly you have no friends, you have nobody to talk to, there's nothing to do after school,
yeah,
and that put me in a very very bad place. So when I moved to university, I kind of made it a life's mission to make sure that nobody else felt that way, felt that lonely. And when I moved at university, especially when there were students from like Kerala and stuff, I would go out there, meet them, bring everyone together. My house was always headquarters kind of place. I would make food, we would all get together, sing a bit of music, share stories, and really build that connection. I think that, and I'm grateful for that, because I still retain almost all of those friendships and connections
yeah,
today, 10 years on. Um, and that's not something easy to forget also, because for all of us at university, it's been an incredible journey getting through university, meeting all of those people, having the kind of experiences that we did, and being able to retain that because, you have that common language, or you have that common background, is, I think, quite beautiful.
yeah. No, it's fine. I was just checking something. Like, kind of going back to like that north with south divide.
Mm.
Like how
Don't get political, Alan. I don't like politics. But crack
um do you think there's been a bit of a concerted effort in kind of almost standardizing like Indian culture to a point where um, you're kind of trying to. I see, like it's kind of looked as kind of breaking down that north-south barrier, right? But
on.
do you think in that effort to break that barrier down, there's
Makes everything the
this?
same.
Well, there's making everything the same, and there's also kind of almost painting over different cultures and kind of pushing whatever's being pushing whatever's being done.
I'm not sure. I haven't really thought about it like that. I think what's been very kind of interesting to see is how OTT platforms, Netflix and Amazon Prime, when
Yeah,
they now bring in all of those films with subtitles, that you could never access before, that you never, someone sitting in Punjab could probably never get access to those kind of Malayalam, Tamil, Telugu films, but now you can. And you can pick up the story, you can pick up the songs, you can pick up the dialogues, the film, what the essence of the film is about. That's been very interesting to watch. And when you have, like, songs like Naruto Naruto getting global recognition and all those awards, it kind of makes me a bit hopeful, thinking, maybe music and films and art from the south will are getting as much prominence as things from the north.
Yeah.
I'm not saying any piece of art should get prominence just because it's from a particular region, rated for its quality and all that kind of stuff. But mainstream or commercial Indian art has, for a very long time, been based on on interpretations of Bollywood. I think that's now changing a lot more. I think with artists getting the opportunity to travel from, especially from like the classical kind of backgrounds. I think people that follow classical art and dance and music will know what's happening in those realms, will know who's who and where, what's happening where. Um, but I think those kind of barriers also breaking down a lot more now, that about those kind of things a lot more, thanks to also social media. And with that, like in London, like I'm very grateful to the Bhavan for putting on those kind of opportunities where you can come and experience classical Indian dance and music from all different areas of India. It's not focused to any one region, or it's not focused just the north or the south. It's an amalgamation of everything, and it's pure quality art. So I would say to everybody, like, make it your responsibility also to go out and experience and go out and explore a bit as to what does Indian art and music and dance mean. Like, make the effort a little bit, because there's so much to explore, there's so much to learn, there's so much beauty in all of it.
Do you
My
think
kind of
it's
thoughts.
become a lot easier for our generation to do that now?
I think so, because now, like, with social media being what it is and giving the kind of exposure and channels to experience all different forms of art everywhere, um I think there's that. And I think people are a lot more willing to just try out things on their own as well, because you have TikTok and because you have Instagram and all those social media platforms. I think people are a lot more willing to kind of create things on their own and just try out, whether it's beats, whether it's software, whether it's a new style of dance, whether it's moves. um I'm somebody that, like, focuses very much on the quality of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And that's very important to me, whether it's the band, whether it's dance, or whether it's whatever. And creating quality takes a lot of, like, discipline, effort, time. um unless you're very magically talented and everything you touch just turns to gold. I'm not one of those people, unfortunately. um so I think with our kind of generations and younger generations, I think I do see that with content creators, with people creating music, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Because there's actually quite a lot of Malayali rappers coming out now.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and obviously, like you're talking about, like the adding to social media has probably made it a lot easier.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I do also think like how much easier it is like for our generation to do it,
Hmm.
because obviously when our parents came here, it was just about putting food on the table,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, just focusing
Like
on that.
focusing on your family and being able to put food on the table.
Hmm.
And once you've got past that barrier,
Hmm.
um, things like being able to focus on arts and creativity
Mm.
becomes a lot more easier,
Hmm.
right? Because obviously I can't ever imagine like our parents, like starting a band
Yeah.
or like,
Well, yeah.
you know what I mean?
I think depends on kind of what you, after a point, what you prioritize on life. I very much acknowledge that our parents' generation, when they moved to the UK, it was about putting food on the table and just surviving on a day-to-day basis. But looking back, I do think that things did get to a point where you had gone past just basic survival, just having to survive. I know that in my parents, and this is not me trying to call them out or something, just an observation, that there could have been a point where, you have a roof over your head, you have enough food on the table, you have all those basic needs are met, and you can allow yourself to experience other things. Um, and I don't think like a lot of parents of our parents' generation give themselves that opportunity, because once kids have eh, grown up and they're moved to university and living independently and all that kind of stuff, I know that even after that point, a lot of uh, Indian parents now still don't give themselves the opportunity to experience art. Doesn't mean you
Yeah.
have to start a band, but even just experience it. Go for those kind of opportunities, even
Yeah.
if they want to. Like, I know my mom, even if she wants to, she won't do it, because that's the kind of mindset they're in.
Yeah.
You know?
Like, yeah. I know what you mean. I think my I've learned a lot about my parents like in
Hmm.
the last like few years, right? Because obviously me and my sister we've both like got jobs now,
They moved
and
out.
we moved
Yeah,
out, we're
yeah,
settled, and
yeah.
my dad's like now kind of just packed his bags and he's done like
I'm
he's
done,
gone
man.
like
Yeah.
my responsibility is finished, and
Finished.
he's moved back to India now,
Yeah,
right? And probably my mom will move back
yeah.
sometime this year, and I realized that my dad's got actually a huge passion for traveling,
Right.
and in this last like 2-3 years
Mm.
he's like him and mum like they've gone to like so many different countries.
Probably more than you've traveled.
Yeah, for sure. And this is something I never knew about them,
Yeah,
and like it just got me thinking about like what kind of sacrifices that our parents
yeah,
have made
yeah,
for us to be here,
yeah.
and that kind of gave me a whole new appreciation
Mm,
for them, and just you know like almost a gratitude,
mm,
because like you hear like so many people talking about gratitude and all of
hmm.
that shit, and you're like, oh, like
What
stop.
does it mean? Where is
Yeah,
it coming
and
from?
like
Yeah,
you're like,
yeah,
oh,
yeah, yeah.
like or you in that moment you think it's all just like talking shit,
Hmm.
and right, but it's so true.
Hmm.
Like honestly, being able to have that level of gratitude for my parents has just it's definitely deepened my relationship with them,
Yeah.
for sure. And it's also kind of gave me a sense of like purpose and an understanding of like who I am as well,
Hmm.
and like um, almost like a sense of responsibility. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Because they've made these sacrifices so that I can be here,
Hmm.
and obviously, if I kind of just throw it away,
Hmm.
it's almost disrespectful to them.
Hmm.
And like, I don't know, have you kind of had that kind of feeling?
Yes, but I also wish our parents shared that part of them while we were growing up, in little bits and bobs while we were
Yeah,
growing up, rather than leaving it until, because growing up, like with parents, with my parents, definitely, you always ever see the strict kind of, go to school, get your education done, this, that, other. There is no time for play and having fun. Although I went to dance and stuff, um, like, I never knew my mom used to dance and love performing until many years later, when I saw photographs of her from my auntie's album, and I was shocked. And something that happened sometime last year, which again shocked me, is we were at a family gathering, and my brothers talked about, like, let's go play badminton. And my dad came along, and not once in my life have I ever seen him play badminton. I didn't even know he likes badminton.
yeah,
He plays left-handed and is really bloody good. And when I looked at that, I felt sad for us, for him, for us, because we've never seen that. We never knew that. And I wish in some way our parents had felt that it would have been safe, it would have been okay to share bits of who they used to be and what
yeah,
their life was about, over and above just focus on work, focus on the basics, this, that, and the other. Because those little joys, it doesn't need to be about money, it doesn't need to involve even spending money.
no, yeah,
You can sit and have conversations about what your dreams are, what your passions have been about, and you can kind of try and work together to make that possible. It doesn't have to be till parents are in their 60s and 70s for
100,
for
yeah,
them to share that life with us.
yeah. No, 100%. I agree with you. I do wish, like we'd been able to do more stuff as a family,
Yep.
like when I was growing up. So I think they had this very singular sense of
Hmm.
focus.
Hmm.
Because it was like, okay, we need to get our kids through uni,
Hmm.
because I noticed it immediately. Like after I went to uni,
Hmm.
my parents like mellowed out from like level 10 to like, I think I'm down to like a level 7, 6, 5. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
like
yeah,
by the time I
yeah.
was like in year 3, like
Mm-hmm.
in final year of uni, like they were like at a level like 5, 4, just
Mm-hmm.
like chilling. And I remember thinking, oh, okay, so like this is something that you were really worried about for me,
Mm-hmm.
because obviously after that you know go into the workforce and
Mm-hmm.
like you start to develop yourself,
Yeah.
and until then you are essentially like your parents' like responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that had a huge part to play in it.
Mm-hmm.
But I always think like it didn't need to have to.
It didn't need to, yeah. And everything that you mentioned, like, getting to this country, having to build a life on your own, especially somewhere like Exeter, where at that time it wasn't very diverse. That
No.
you didn't know people, you didn't know how to connect to people. All you know is the language. You don't know what to what to say that's right or wrong. Um, so I understand very much the singular need then. Um, but I just, yeah, something that can't be changed. But for me, one of my biggest learning is that if I have kids in the future, I don't want to leave it till they're in university or
Yeah.
married off for me to share the dance that I know, the music that I know. Doesn't
Yeah.
need to involve money, doesn't have to be about money.
Yeah.
It's the little joys, you
Yeah.
know?
I think that's probably like something that everyone will
Yeah,
want to share with their kids,
yeah.
because I mean, I guess um like, once you have a family,
Mm.
you want ideally you'd want your kids to have a better life than you had, right?
Hmm, hmm.
And like obviously we never had that part where our
Yeah,
parents like shared
yeah,
themselves with us, so
yeah.
we'd be like, oh, okay, we'd want to share that with our kids.
Hmm.
And I'm guessing like when our kids have kids, like that's something that they
It will
do, yeah,
change.
that
Yeah,
they'll do as well. Like I
yeah.
think like it will eventually get to that stage
Hmm,
like where you are, you know, you become kind of integrated
hmm.
within your kids' lives, and like they become that as well, instead of it just being like a parent-child relationship
Yeah.
where it's just like almost like a teacher.
What was also interesting for me in my whole journey with the arts was, you know how I said, like, when I was young and my mom was the one taking me to competitions and this, that, and the other. When I went to university, because she couldn't see anymore what I was doing on a day-to-day basis. When I'm there, like, going to competitions and starting things on my own, all this kind of stuff. I remember my mom asking me a lot of times, why are you doing all of that stuff? Why are you constantly out there? And I think that tied in very much with the affair that, okay, she's now older, she's a woman. What will people say? What will people think? All of that. So I think, and I'm sure a lot of, like, brown females will relate to that. You have to prove yourself anyway. Then you have
Yeah,
to prove yourself to parents. Then you have to provide 1,000 justifications for why you're doing what you're doing. Although all I'm doing is just sharing dance. That's all I'm doing. I remember almost feeling like, I'm just gonna go ahead and do it anyway. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what my parents say. And that was a very difficult journey to go on with my parents, especially my mom, because explaining, like, it's not. I'm not dancing anymore because you're telling me to. I am dancing, or I'm involved in whatever creative stuff I'm involved in because that's what I want and makes me happy. That change, I think, in mindset, in perspective, took my mom a very long time to understand. Even when it, went on to starting a band and making a documentary film. It's not a journey that's complete. It's still very much in progress.
yeah,
Even today, she asked me if I'm going to do something new. Why are you going there? Why are you doing this, that, and the other? But I think it's got to a point where she knows that if I say I'm going to do something, I will have a very good reason for it, and I will do it no matter what, and I'll do a good job of it.
yeah,
I think that is, I guess, also something for us to consider as a society. Why do we? Because a number of times I've had people say to me, "You can't do that," or "You can't try something new," or "You can't be who you are because you are a woman or because you are Indian." That sounds so typical. It sounds stupid when I say it out loud, but I've had that so many times, and people being shocked, thinking, "Oh, but are you allowed to do that?" This and that. And I got to a point where I was like, "I don't care whether I'm allowed, whether it's within the rules, whether this, that, or the other. I'm gonna go ahead and do what I'm doing because I am passionate about it, and I'm gonna make it work one way or another."
yeah. Do you think there's a almost a sort of defiance in doing it?
I think that for me, that's how it started off. Because when I moving to university was kind of, you know groundbreaking for me in a lot of different ways. Being able to, like, assert my own independence, being able to have a lot more opportunities in a different light. being able to really accomplish something on my own, I couldn't get enough of it, and there was always like my mom used to ask me like, why you always getting home late at night, or why all these long rehearsals, all this kind of stuff. And I used to make me angry because then I used to say to her, you were the one who throughout my childhood kept sending me to competitions, kept sending me to training and all of that kind of stuff. So it was okay as long as it happened under your turf. So now I'm trying to actually do it on my own and you're no longer being supportive. That makes no sense. And you have your arguments and you have your conversations. And I realized with time, um, like with my parents, rather than reacting in a aggressive or an angry way, actually trying to scale the conversation, de-escalate the conversation, explain to my parents even the why of, why is it important for me to start a band? Why is it important for me to want to travel? Why is it important? And up to a point, they will try to understand, they will try to accept. But my parents being our parents being of the generation that they are, I think there's us people our generation also kind of need to accept that there's some things maybe you cannot change, and then it's up to you to decide, do I go ahead with what I want to do because I don't want to regret not doing that, or do I hold myself back? But that's a decision you need to take and you need to be okay with that. For me, it was very much at the time in university, I don't want to regret not doing any of those things, not having any of the experiences, so I'm going to go ahead and do what I want to do.
Yeah.
Now I'm a bit more, what do you say, not so militant about my decisions. It's a bit more like what's the bigger picture, what are my priorities right now.
Yeah.
With my mom, like, recovering from surgery, would I choose to go on a trip or would I choose to be at home with her? So I think your priorities change as you grow older, but at that time I remember, like, militant is the word I would use about decision, and defiance, like you said, was very much there. And in a way I'm glad it was there, because I went ahead and did a lot of stuff that when I look back, those experiences were fantastic. And there were a lot of wins, there were a lot of accomplishments, there were a lot of failures that I learned from. And I wouldn't trade those experiences for anything.
Yeah. I think it's probably something a lot of people are scared about, right?
Mm.
Failures, like
Mm-hmm.
failing in life,
Yep.
failing in whatever.
And trying new things.
Yeah. Because, like I was saying before, it's easier to just be comfortable and
Mm-hmm.
stay inside your own bubble
Yeah.
than it is to actually have that risk of like failing at something you do.
Yeah.
I think probably this, like us doing this kind of stuff, it paves like a way for
Mm-hmm.
people to think, oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like it doesn't, like just because you do something doesn't mean it has to mean something.
Yeah.
Like just because I'm doing this podcast doesn't mean like I want to like go anywhere, or like I've just thought of it as a medium to have conversations with
Mm.
people
Yeah.
about stuff that I find interesting.
Yeah.
I was talking about this with my sister, and she was saying like hour and a half, 2 hours, that's like too long for a podcast. You need to make it smaller, like 30 minutes, 45 minutes. And I'm like, that's not the kind of podcast that I listen to.
Mm-hmm.
Like the ones that I listen to, like are long format ones,
Yeah.
and those are the ones that I enjoy. Why would I create something that I don't enjoy listening to in the first place?
Mm-hmm.
Because I think when you set out to create content or do arts or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I think there's this impression that people who view it from the outside have, that you're doing it to kind of um, portray yourself
Yeah.
to other people in a certain way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't think they've realized that you're doing it for yourself.
Yeah, because that's not something a lot of people are used to or they're very comfortable with. Like, what I know my parents have asked me before, what do you mean you are passionate about that? Or what do you mean you're doing it for yourself? Because especially from a parents' generation, they've almost never done anything for themselves. It's always been for the
Yeah.
siblings or for the family or for the community. They've, this whole concept of doing something for yourself because you really enjoy that doesn't exist in a lot of
Yeah,
worlds.
100%. Like I've had pushback on doing this from my parents.
Mm.
They've been like, why are you doing this?
Why?
Like
Yeah.
you're just spending a lot of time,
Mhm.
like, and it's not really, it's not something you want to be doing, that
Mhm.
kind of thing. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm just doing it because I enjoy doing it, and that's all it is at the end of the
Mhm.
day. I think, again, obviously being in that kind of bubble,
Mhm.
they can't really think about it in that way.
Mhm. Mhm.
But hopefully, in the future, that kind of stuff changes.
Mhm.
Um, Talk to me about the UN ambassador, the UN Women's Ambassador thing?
Oh, I wasn't expecting that question. So UN Women UK are putting together a delegate. I think it's a couple of thousand. It's volunteers um, to be part of the 67th Commission on the Status of Women. It's an annual gathering almost of people, and the topic this year is, I think, it's technological change and education to improve gender empowerment and like equality. That's the gist of the theme this year. So I had a couple of people that I follow who had applied and they got through. And I was like, this is fantastic because there's a lot of work and programs and initiatives I've been a part of for over 10 years that focuses on kind of equality and inclusion. I've done like International Women's Day programs before where you're holding a giving a platform for women to come together and express themselves and create stuff together. But this is something I really want to be a part of because that's the opportunity to be part of talks and conversations and workshops and connect with a lot of like-minded people. So I went on, I did an application, wrote a piece about what my previous experiences have been, what I'm hoping to get out of being part of this program, and thankfully got accepted. Um, I mean, I think this episode will be released by the time the application deadline is done, but the application deadline is 26th of February. So if you know, if any of your friends want to be part of it, if you want to be a part of it, I would say do apply because I've never done something like this before, but I think the opportunity to speak and connect with a lot of like-minded people for me is very powerful because when you think about women empowerment and gender equality, all of those things, in a way, it's very sad that we're still fighting for those things in today's day and age. The fight and the journey is far from over, and I think now more than ever there needs to be a very kind of conscious effort among our peers, among everybody across the globe, to take that journey ahead and make significant strides.
Yeah.
um so I'm super excited to be
So
part of it.
is that more in the developing world than in the Western world, or is it a mix of both?
I would say everywhere. I don't think like gender inequality is a problem just in the developing world. I see it in the UK. For UK is a first world country. I see it in the kind of like in my job, in my day-to-day job that I do. Can't talk too much about the job that I do, but I see the clients that I deal with, the customers that I have to deal with. Um, I see very much how gender inequality plays out. I have a lot of women that come to my work. They are our clients who are trying to escape domestic violence. There are kids who have are trying to escape child abuse. All of those kind of situations where they have terribly been let down by society, by people, by partners, by parents, and it's extremely sad. And that's in the UK, in a first world country. So I think it's a global problem,
Yeah.
and it's not something that needs to be addressed only by people from a specific region or a community. It's everybody's problem, and we all need to take, I think, a very conscious effort to act and have conversations and improve our awareness of all of what those terms actually mean. What does equality mean? What does inclusion mean? What does it mean? What does gender equality actually mean? What does female empowerment actually mean? How are we all affected by patriarchy, by sexism, by classism, by casteism, all of those terms? Because I think, and it's not so much like blaming our generation thing for it, but people often tend to just think this is somebody else's problem because it's not really happening to me.
Yeah.
um and I think that's a very there's an almost like dangerous way to think because not making an effort to understand what those kind of problems are. And I see it in Indian societies, like playing like sexism and misogyny and all that sort of playing out the way it does, and almost nobody, not a lot of people question it. Nobody talks about it. Nobody wants to talk about it because there's
Yeah.
so much shame and taboo involved. And I'm somebody who doesn't care about any of that stuff. I challenge my parents. I challenge my mom on so many things today, and she gets fed up with me, and she's like, why are you trying to fight me, and why are you trying to turn this into a fight and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, no, it doesn't matter if you're 50 or 65 or 75. If you're gonna put across, you know, like those kind of controversial backward thinking thoughts and ideas today, I am going to challenge that. And for me, I'm getting married later this year, and I hear so many things from relatives, especially female relatives. This is the way you need to be. This is the way you need to portray yourself, so that the groom's family is not threatened, and this, that, and the other. And I go,
Really?
I get that. Honestly, I get
Sorry,
that.
did you say like the groom's family is not threatened?
Not threatened, like, what will they think of you, and
Okay.
how is it gonna like impact your image and all that kind of stuff. Because I am somebody that's very bold and outspoken. Everybody who knows me knows that.
Yeah.
Um, I don't take shit from anybody, and that is how I've been for a very long time. That is who I am, and I'm very grateful to have a personality like that. And it's not something that everybody can digest. It's not something um everybody is comfortable with. And I'm not the kind of person to kind of bring my guns out every conversation. That's not what it's about. But being able to have the freedom to express myself and express my identity, I've had to fight very hard for that, and it's not something I will compromise on
Yeah.
without a good reason, for any reason, and to be honest.
Yeah. I guess you should always, well, yeah, I mean, obviously, like, you should always be able to kind of just exist, right?
Hmm.
Like, I think at the end of the day, that's probably what most people are just like fighting for.
Not just exist, but exist without fear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exist without fear, and to be who you are and who you want to be.
Yeah. I think probably the next like few years,
Hmm.
it's going to be interesting to see what kind of direction society takes
Hmm.
in that kind of regards. Because obviously, I'm not going to get too into the weeds there,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
there is a lot of it's what I was talking about before, where you're almost existing within your own echo chambers
Yes.
in society at the
Yeah.
moment.
Yeah.
Like obviously, and everything's become political. Like
Hmm.
it's become like a left versus right issue.
Hmm.
Like climate change, like that's the most insane part to me.
Hmm.
Like how something like even climate change can
Hmm.
become politicized.
Hmm.
So I think it's going to be really fascinating and almost scary to see what happens, but at the very least, it'll be interesting.
I think for me, like, that's why. So my mentor, and I'm so grateful to have her. She's been my mentor for over 10 years now. Dr. Suad, you know her.
Yeah,
Um, her entire life has been about advocating for equality and for change, without ever getting into politics, because her way of campaigning, of driving change, is through art, is through conversations, is through bringing people together. And that's where I focus my energies on as well. When we talked about music and we talked about arts and thinking and bringing people together, there's no reason to make music political, although people do, but
yeah,
there isn't, and it shouldn't. Any kind of performing, any kind of arts, any kind of initiatives, any kind of things rooted in the arts, or rooted in kind of sports, don't make those things political. You know, use that as a platform to bring communities together, to break down barriers. That's what her work has always been about. That's been a major influence in my life, and has actually been the catalyst for me going on to do a lot of things that I did, like being part of dance or starting up the band. It's to break down those barriers and bring people together. When we are in the kind of world we're living in today, where we are isolated, and we have all this kind of news coming through from all different channels, very it can be very easy to kind of lose connection and know what is actually real and what's what's not real so much. um and I think that's where things like this podcast, where you're having conversation, when you're building a connection with the people you're speaking to, I think is so important.
yeah,
And I think will be the future to really driving change and making an impact.
yeah. I think, like you're saying, being able to have a conversation about something
Hmm.
without making it political,
Hmm.
I think that's
Hmm.
probably going to become key to how we move forward as a society.
Yep.
Because you, you can have disagreements at the end of the day,
Hmm.
because everyone is different,
Hmm.
as much as they are similar.
Hmm.
But I think the pitfall is when you just make it into a political issue.
Or you cancel that person out altogether, because
Yeah,
that person's opinion cannot exist in your world.
yeah. I think that's probably also something that's happening quite a lot as well
Hmm.
recently, isn't it?
And I think also, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I've seen, because of social media and all the wonderful things it brings, I have seen, along with that, I've seen a real breakdown in people being able to have a conversation, actually.
Yeah.
you know Having a conversation, having an in-depth, genuine conversation is very much an art, where it's a safe space where you give somebody the space to express their thoughts and engage in a discussion, all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. And it's quite sad to see that, especially among people our generation and the younger generations. What does it mean to be able to speak to somebody about something as like mental health? What does it mean to be able to speak to somebody about a potential failure, about a heartbreak, all those kind of stuff? I feel like we don't have those spaces anymore where it's safe to just be and have whatever is going on, but then be able to speak safely about it. And I think that needs to change
Yeah.
big time.
I think that's probably a consequence of the path that society's taken
Hmm.
with regards to like technology and also even like industry and like just
Hmm.
business at that, because like this is one thing I've kind of probably been thinking about quite a lot recently. Like a job,
Hmm.
right? You are a human being, but at the end of the day, your purpose is to make the business money, right? Because you are just thought of either as an asset or a
Hmm.
liability to the
Hmm.
organization.
Hmm.
And obviously, liabilities are bad, right?
Hmm.
For the bottom line.
Hmm.
And like what a business needs is an asset. And I think we've kind of gone so far that
Into just becoming assets.
into just becoming assets for
Hmm.
organizations, for oh, I don't like want to say like big capital,
Hmm.
but corporations as a
Hmm.
whole.
Hmm.
Um, I think that's quite telling. It's quite telling in what's happening, like just every day now. Like if you just look at the news, like, just think of how many people are actually protesting,
Hmm.
right? You've got like I made this joke at work saying it's the season to protest because it's true. Like everyone's protesting. You got rail workers protesting, junior doctors, nurses,
Yeah, civil service
teachers,
teachers. Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
everyone.
yeah.
And like obviously, I think it's very worrying that this is happening
Hmm.
for society. Like, I mean, obviously, you'll have the ultra capitalists saying, like you do sign a contract, you're not forced to work it,
Hmm.
like, which is fair enough. But also, you should be able to, just earn a living wage.
Hmm. Hmm.
Right? Um, this is a developed country.
Hmm.
Like, you shouldn't like, in my in my opinion, it makes zero sense that teachers are making like absolute peanuts,
Hmm.
and some teachers are actually quitting their jobs to work in Tesco's to
Hmm.
because they make more money
Hmm.
stacking shelves.
Hmm.
I'm not that I'm saying it's like a menial job or anything,
Hmm.
but it is crazy that someone who's become that educated and wanted to kind of put their lives into raising the future generations are having to kind of make those choices.
Hmm.
I think yeah, I think like it's crazy that this is kind of the part that we've taken as a
Yeah, this is where
society.
it's got to.
Yeah, this is where it's got to. Yeah, I think like we're gonna see loads of like big changes happening like in the near future. I think things are gonna get really bad before they get better.
Hmm.
Um,
What holds promise for me is, like, I think younger generations more so than previous ones are a lot more, maybe a bit more conscious about living a sustainable life. I feel like they are a
yeah,
lot more open to questioning and having those conversations way more than previous generations. And that gives me a bit of hope. And I think there's been a very long time of wanting too much and having too much. Nothing's ever enough. I think we all, as a society, as a generation, need to take a check on that and start to think, how can I make my way of living a bit more sustainable? And I am as guilty is in all of this. you know Whenever you think about wanting to buy that new dress or wanting to buy that extra thing, I'm not saying, just live a life of just basic needs and wants. We all work hard, we all want to enjoy a good life, but understand thinking about what you're indulging in before you do so.
yeah,
and making small changes, I think might go a long way. I mean, definitely worth trying out. Definitely for me, worth trying that out.
Yeah. I think we'll start wrapping up in a bit.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, thank you for coming on. Really
Alan, thank you for
appreciate it.
having me. That was a very the whole conversation went in so many different angles, and I love that. So thank you for having me on.
All right. Thank you for listening, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.